Well, listen. Let's get straight into to talking about the Damon. But first of all, I was just going to ask you to give a quick intro. So for people that don't know you, just give a quick overview of your background and how you came to be the founder of Damon Motorcycles.
Yeah, I came to be the founder because I wanted to make motorcycles a lot better. I've had it in my head for a really long time, since I was probably 24 or 25, that if you have a really good idea in life that you feel extremely strongly about, very passionate about, that is your responsibility. If you're given an inspiration into your mind from whatever source you believe things to come from, it's literally your responsibility to get it done. That's why it came into your head, not someone else's. And I think I came to that conclusion after about a half dozen good ideas that I had in my teens and early 20s that eventually I didn't pursue, and someone else pursued them. Yep. only see them be successful by that idea. And I realized, man, you got to do the things that you believe in inside your own heart and mind, even if you don't have all or any of the qualifications for doing it. And I definitely fall into that bucket. I'm a high school dropout, and I turned pro snowboarder at the age of 20 and lived in Whistler and snowboarded all over the world and competed in global contests. And none of that translates to building anything electric that goes on the road. So, but this is my third automotive tech company. Yeah. My first was not a fail, but it was a flatline. My second has been wildly successful all over Europe and North America. And Damon is my third, and Damon will be my legacy. And besides being an avid motorcyclist of 25 years, and knowing a little bit about electric drive technology, what I seem to know how to do is to put together extraordinarily gifted people, and motivate them by a singular vision towards something greater, that is all too ambitious, but it makes people get up in the morning, and do things they love, and it makes people happy. And so I've been really enjoying, motorcycles. And Damon, we're going to transform the entire landscape of light mobility around the world.
Amazing. And just to go back one step, a question I wanted to ask you: what was your first motorcycle?
SV650S to 1999. I think it was 96 or 99.
Okay, awesome.
I thought it was so powerful. Now I laugh about it.
Yeah, the first proper bike is always. I started with a scooter, 50cc scooter. And then when I jumped to a BMW 650 Funduro, and it might as well have been an R1 to me, it was so fast.
Awesome.
The first time I heard about this motorcycle was around the CES launch in January. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah. That was nothing short of extraordinary. I'll share a little bit of the gory details. We rolled into CES on fumes, and I mean that in every way you can imagine, having overcommitted ourselves to a dozen things that we had no way of pulling off in November and December prior to CES. And then sure enough, we somehow made it by faith and luck to be on stage with BlackBerry QNX, which is one of our technology partners, nested between Honda and all of its self-driving cars, and Audi and all of their self-driving cars. And we plan to do a big unveil, pull the sheet off the bike to those that care about motorcycling, which in North America is not very many people. But instead, we ended up having to do the unveil about 4 times a day.
Oh, wow.
And we had the Secretary of the Department of Transportation ride the bike. We had a virtual test rig that she was able to ride. We had CEOs from major automotive corporations, people from Bosch and Yamaha, and it was just extraordinary levels of energy for 4 days straight. Amazing. Even on the Friday, which is normally a very quiet day, it was our busiest by far. Just a packed, floor of 200 people all day long.
What was it in particular that was do you think that was blowing people away?
I think the biggest thing was that it was so different from what other people, from what you see on the automotive show floor at CES, 1. And 2, it wasn't a concept made of fiberglass and foam. CES is really well known for showing off stuff that doesn't ever actually get to market.
Yeah.
And it was a functioning prototype. We were lighting up the rear wheel to 100 miles per hour on the stand countless times. the bike transformed before your eyes, the co-pilot collision warning systems fully functional,
Yeah.
right before your eyes with audiences all around it. So it was real. And I think it was real, it was relevant, it was sexy. And even if you don't love motorcycling, you may actually wish you always could ride, but you don't because it's not safe enough, or you know someone that's been badly injured, or it's meaningful what we were doing too. And I think that was just the right mix of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, safety is one of the biggest elements to this bike. And I know that every time I speak to friends of mine about why they don't ride a motorcycle, it's the safety element. And as someone who's ridden since, for sort of 20 odd years, I find it really weird because obviously, if you're self-aware and you ride carefully, I don't find it any more dangerous than walking in the streets. It's got two elements to the safety, right? So there's the actual, it could actually save lives, but it could also, it's the message that it's putting out to new riders that this bike is actually safer than anything else on the market.
Exactly. That is a really big message. In the last week or so, we've announced that we're open for test ride submissions. We're looking for people in North America to tell us, where do they live and where do they hope for us to come through next year for our demo tour. And we had 700 odd people in the first few days fill out the form. We're well over 1,000 now. We've got almost 1,000 pre-orders for this bike on a completely other list. And all of these people, thousands of people that have filled out these surveys for us, have told us what they love about Damon and why. And an amazingly high number of people are ordering this bike or signing up to test ride who have given up on riding entirely, or always wanted to, but didn't feel like, circumstances and the bikes were correct for them. So we are tapping into a world of people who would never buy a Honda or a Yamaha or a Suzuki because they don't have the combination of no noise, eliminating emissions, and augmenting safety. And those three things, I think, are grossly overlooked at how important they are for this demographic and for the modern millennial and the Gen Zs that are coming along.
No, absolutely. I mean, it seems like the sort of safety technology in bikes has come to with the big manufacturers has come to a grinding halt, because I know ABS, certainly in Europe, ABS is now mandatory on most bikes, I think. We've got, on the higher end bikes, you've got traction control, stability control. But then if you compare that to the automotive industry, where you've got active braking and all sorts of collision warning systems, like I say, we seem to have come to a grinding halt, and it seems strange that it's not something that any other manufacturers have gone for. Can you think why that is?
Yeah, I think I've talked to CEOs of a good half of the motorcycle manufacturers. Some of them I've worked closely with, and I think it's a whole lot of things. One is the classic answer. It's corporate inertia. You're a big company, you're spread out, and you've got offices in every country in the world, and it's hard to get people aligned on a singular goal. The other one is when you make whatever it is, 250,000 bikes a year. Adding new technology to 250,000 bikes is for them very risky. You can imagine the level of testing, the time required to do anything. But the big one is they don't see a problem. They don't have a problem. Motorcycling around the world is growing 7% year over year. That's a very good number. That's a predictable number. Nobody wants to mess with that. And so why add new technology and take that risk when you don't have to? And that is exactly what all the car companies said to Tesla for the last 12 years. And that's why Tesla is a solid decade ahead of the competition, because until you're eating their market share, they don't feel any pain from a startup like Tesla or Damon in this case.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Okay, so the other, as I say, I remember seeing information around the original CES launch, and then the thing that kind of brought me to want to speak to you directly was a video that I saw on LinkedIn, and it was actually the kind of the demo video showing the adaptive ride system that it's got, and that kind of completely sort of blew me away, because again, that's such a huge part of it. I mean, it bleeds into safety as well, but it's a huge part of riding a motorcycle. And I mean, to give you quite an extreme example, I bought myself, I've always wanted a sports bike, never owned a sports bike. So I bought an S1000 RR
Oh, you just jumped right in.
so I just went for the most powerful bike I could buy, which was amazing, and it was relatively easy to ride, and obviously you've got all the riding modes and stuff. It's a great bike. I had it for like 3 months and then I sold it because the problem I had with it was you have kind of on a long ride you have kind of moments of glory where you're really in the zone and you're kind of the riding position is perfect. For the rest of the time, it's really, really uncomfortable and kind of, in terms of visibility and your awareness, kind of unsafe as well.
Yeah, all too familiar, man. 24 years of riding sport bikes, and I won't give up riding sport bikes. I won't. I've got a KTM Super Duke. I've had MT 07s and other upright bikes, and I love the BMW R90, but I can't make myself give up that feeling of being totally merged with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say, like, Shift wasn't even my idea. Shift was my co-founder Dom's idea. We had one of our prototypes about a year and a half ago, totally stripped down. And we're just looking at, the skeleton of it. And he's sitting there like this for the longest time. And I'm like, man, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you think it'd be like if like the handlebars went up and down and the foot pegs moved in the windscreen? And I'm like, I think I had to think about it for an hour before I even had an answer for him, because it was such a brain twister.
Yeah.
And that was an extraordinary moment. This, to be so confounded by an idea that you have to kind of go walk around the block and think about it. And I came back and I said, how long would it take to build a prototype? And he's like, a couple of weeks. And I said, okay, we got to try it then. And the first moment I rode on it, and it was a rough prototype, I was doing, 60 kilometers an hour, leaving a red light, going onto this ramp that elevated me about 3 stories onto a bridge. And on the bridge, I can accelerate to about 100 kilometers an hour into downtown Vancouver. And so as I accelerated, I'm in commute mode. So the handlebars are up, the foot pegs are down. I'm in an upright position, comfortable. I don't feel like I'm part of the bike, but great steerability. And as I accelerated to 90, 100 kilometers an hour, I pressed the button and I'm on a right lean, and the bike starts drawing me and my upper body mass down into the gas tank area of the motorbike, if you will. And I felt like it was merging me with the motorcycle, as opposed to dropping your elbows and tucking your body and having to hold yourself up. And it was like being folded into the machine. It was an extraordinary moment. It was super exciting. And suddenly you're in battle mode and you can just carve away. And that was an epiphany. Like, I'll never forget that moment. It was so cool.
Amazing. Because it's definitely one of the features. It's definitely one of the kind of, certainly visually, when you look at the kind of promotional material around the bike, it's definitely one of the features that just comes out and grabs you straight away. First of all, because it's an amazing idea, but secondly, just because, like you say, because visually it just looks so amazing when it kind of transforms. Now, the other, moving on from the kind of safety and comfort, the other thing that's amazing about this bike is the performance. I mean, like I say, I've just come from a BMW S1000, and this performance is right up there.
It's a little more up there than the BMW S1000. Yeah. It's 100% electric, and it has 235 Newton meters of torque at 0 RPM, all the way up to about 12,000 RPM of the motor. And then it starts to trail off as you get into the peak horsepower. And if you look at the torque and horsepower line of a BMW, these lines on these very, very smooth 4-cylinder engines are actually really kind of choppy. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the line of torque on a graph of an electric motor or the horsepower, the lines are glass smooth, and that's the way they're coming in from the the ECUs of these bikes into the software that shows you how these curves look on a graph. And you don't know smooth until you ride an electric vehicle with this kind of power, and everything else just seems like, I don't know, indescribably old by comparison. To have this kind of power, but also have it in such a glass smooth way, it inspires a level of confidence and road feel that a MotoGP rider needs 20 years to develop.
Okay,
it's pretty incredible.
And that leads on perfectly to my next question, actually, which was around. I know it describes in the tech specs as kind of track ready performance. And I know when the Tesla was originally launched, you know, the kind of the big thing was around the ludicrous mode, and it could kind of embarrass muscle cars and supercars and things like that. If someone gets the Hypersport onto a track, I mean, is this the kind of, in the right hands, is this going to embarrass someone on a kind of, you know, on an M Sport BMW?
It might, yeah. We're about 10% heavier than an M Sport BMW, but I mean, I'm talking about a wet BMW,
Yeah,
Damon, which is always wet. You know, there's no gas in it, so you know. But the power and the weight balance is so much greater. The off the line torque is so much greater that you will never feel the difference. You'll never feel the weight addition. It's a tiny penalty that you trade off for an amazing amount of smoothness and power. And the bike, like all sport bikes today, will have different power modes: rain, you know, sport, and street and track. And track mode is going to have a hard time keeping the tire from breaking away if you don't know how to handle the throttle, really, with a lot of finesse. But of course, in every other mode, you know, even though you have these kinds of power that are almost too much for any rear tire, that's managed by software.
yeah, no, fair enough. And I know just this week it's been announced. You've got the new sort of Hyperdrive system that's been announced, which is this, which is this new kind of powertrain. Is it the kind of motor and battery in one unit? Is that how it works?
It's like one unit. And if you think about a monocoque frame on a car, or you know, where the outer structure is doubling as the chassis of the vehicle. So in our case, our battery pack is kind of a kidney shape or a C-shaped battery, designed in a very, very odd shape in order to maximize all of the room for putting in these cylindrical cells, these small cylindrical cell batteries, and laying them out in a way that creates almost perfect 50-50 weight balancing between the front and the rear tire. And then in the center of this C-shaped battery shell is our motor. And our motor is a very dense liquid-cooled 6-phase, 16,000 RPM, high power motor. And together they're bolted together so that the headstock of the motorcycle and the rear swing arm attach right to the shell of this entire package that we call Hyperdrive. So the radiators, the motor, the electronics, the battery pack, all one block, if you will, one physical unit. It is the bike.
Yeah.
It's the bike minus the suspension and the wheels. Yeah, that's just game changing by itself, because now you have a central unit that, by changing the forks and the swing arm type, you could change the entire kind of motorcycle that it is.
That's amazing. And so from your perspective, for kind of manufacturing, that must open up a huge array of possibilities.
Yeah, you actually just went right to the main point. Yes, exactly. And understanding that's huge. I've had this conversation numerous times, and no one extracted that bit of information so quickly. Yeah, that's exactly right. When you have a core chassis battery pack motor combo, if you will, with a headstock and a swing arm mount, and you can change those two things, you can make an adventure bike, you can make a commuter bike, you can make, you know, all sorts of different motorcycles, really, from the same common components.
Why did you choose to launch with a sports bike?
A sport bike is the second most popular bike in North America. You know, I guess because people who want the latest tech, the latest and greatest everything, tend to buy, you know, sports vehicles, and sports competition is really where innovation is driven from. And so there's this ethos around racing where if you're buying a racing type of vehicle, you're expecting to get the best of the best. And that's really where we can create a halo effect for the company by starting with something that's really, really sexy. So you don't have to love motorcycling to love the look of that bike beside me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, that's actually one of my friends who's a designer really wanted to ask you this question. So in terms of the kind of design language that we've got at the moment with the Damon Hypersport and also a lot of the electric vehicles, you know, including Tesla for cars, they're following the kind of quite traditional route in terms of what's gone before. And I guess, can you see, especially with things like the Hyperdrive, can you see a point where they start to develop, EVs start to develop their own kind of design language based around the new technology? Because at the moment it still feels like we're making EVs look like gasoline vehicles.
Yeah, an amazing number of people have told us that that's the thing they really love about the Damon bike, is that it's approachable. You know, the Hypersport is familiar. It doesn't look like it's trying to be too weird and unusual in a sea of sport bikes on a big sport bike ride on a Sunday, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, you can fit in, but have something really unique and exciting. And you know, there's the Arc Vector, and there's a couple of other electric motorbikes that have come out that are just all too strange, that are hard to, you know, get excited and get passionate about. And I think it's important that Damon looks a couple of years ahead of its time, but not 5 or 10. Right. And there will be a time, you know, there will be a Cybertruck moment for us, if you will, right, where the vehicle hugely departs from the past, and there will be a time for that. But you can't shock the public into loving you. You kind of have to be familiar and friendly, but also be exciting and new.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to be fair as well, I've just all the stuff I've been reading recently about the Cybertruck is that they're heavily into in the redesign phase at the moment. So I think the idea that we were going to get that truck, was possibly never going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the range and the price of these, the HS and the Premier were the bikes that you launched with. All of those pre-orders sold out, right?
The Premiers and the Hypersport Founder Edition sold out. We're still taking orders for the 2 new Premiers and the HS. Yeah.
Okay. And then recently as well, there's 2 new models which are going to be kind of, I guess, the more affordable side of things, the SE and the SX.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing about Hyperdrive that's really exceptional, is being able to build multiple sized battery packs called Hyperdrive for different customer needs, right? So we can build an 11 kilowatt hour Hyperdrive for the Hypersport SE with 100 miles range and 100 horsepower, or we can build the 15 kilowatt hour Hypersport SX for 150 miles range and roughly 150 horsepower, or we can put in all 1,000 cells and fill it completely and have the Hypersport HS or Premier with 200 horsepower and 200 miles range on the highway. And of course, that affects the price point. It also affects the weight. Mm-hmm. The thing that is the same across all of them, ironically, is the torque.
Okay.
So if you buy the lowest end Hypersport SE, you're getting 100 miles range, 150 horsepower, but you're still getting up to 235 Newton meters of torque.
So that acceleration is going to feel amazing on throughout the whole range, basically.
Pretty goofy. Yeah. Pretty crazy still, if you put it in full race mode.
Excellent. And that actually, the range I thought was really interesting, because apart from big adventure bikes, range isn't something that we're necessarily used to in the motorcycling world. I've had Harleys that, you know, do like 70, 80 miles on a tank, and less sometimes. And again, going back to the BMW S1000, you know, that's maxes out at about 140. I never got 150 miles out of it, but you know, so actually, when we're kind of going through all the things that we've talked about, which is the safety, the comfort, the adaptability, the performance, it's funny with bikes, with EV bikes, that actually range, which is the one massive anxiety that people had about you know, electric cars, is kind of quite the opposite, right? And it's actually potentially going to be a greater range than a traditional bike.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, when you're driving a 6,000 pound Tesla, when you have, you know, say P100D or whatever, you might have 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers range. In the highway, in the city, it's shorter. Whereas on a motorcycle, it's the opposite, because the motorcycle's weight to range ratio, it's actually the opposite. So on a motorcycle, the Damon Hypersport HS, you're going to get twice the range of a comparable gas motorcycle. Amazing. And then even more in the city. So the city will be upwards of 300 miles because of the start-stop functionality of the city and the light weight that you have to constantly break away from that inertia again and again, means you get even more range in city conditions.
Amazing. I read something quite interesting about the demographics of the riders that were actually doing the pre-orders for these bikes, which was quite unexpected if you look at the kind of rest of the industry. They were younger, more experienced riders.
Yeah, so I'll just give you the demographics here, which is fascinating. So the average age of everybody ordering a Damon bike is 37. The average years riding is 19. So we're getting people that have been riding as early as 18 years old, so probably dirt bikes or scooters. The age range 18 to 44, a quarter of them under the age of 25, and 66% of them under the age of 44. And most people, well, the average number of bikes they own is 2. So, we're getting very experienced people attracted to the Hypersport HS and Premier, but that are quite young. And I think that as the Hypersport SE and SX come available, that we'll see more beginners entering as well because of the price point, but probably equally young crowd that's coming onto the bike, which is really exciting.
One big question I had, and I think you touched on it earlier on. It does seem really strange, given the trajectory that we've seen with Tesla and the major manufacturers having to play catch up. The big motorcycle manufacturers haven't or don't seem to have invested heavily in EV technology.
Yeah, I know exactly why that is, and it's a really complicated problem for them. And kind of back to, why aren't they doing safety technology? It's a combination of, if this is, let's say this large thing here is a battery cell from a BMW that they use in their car, they are obligated to use that same battery in their motorbikes in order to try to make the most out of their R&D investment into that battery. And you can imagine that battery is a terrible shape for a motorbike. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So BMW cars and BMW motorbikes share the same R&D balance sheet. And so they're enormously limited by the previous investments they've made that drive them into a certain direction. But the bigger thing is cannibalizing. They're making hundreds of thousands of motorbikes that are selling today. It's exceedingly difficult to imagine themselves out competing their gas product with an electric product and not cannibalize their line of products. And that's like a schizophrenia that these big car and motorcycle companies just can't adopt as much as maybe we think they should. They just can't. And that's why you can't get a really good electric Mercedes or electric BMW that comes close to a Tesla.
Yeah. And it seems, and to that end, it seems really, it was then an even bigger surprise that the kind of one of the most complete sort of, or potentially complete looking electric bikes that's come out recently is the Livewire from Harley Davidson, which was, I think, if anyone had sort of taken bets on who would be the last company to sort of move away from classic bikes and sort of gas and oil, it would be Harley Davidson. Was that a kind of surprise in the industry, or did everyone see that coming?
They've been talking about it since at least 2012. So I think it was a surprise that they followed through, to be honest, but not a surprise that they were working on it because it's been discussed for quite a long time. But like the problem is that Harley Davidson has sold exceptionally poorly. There's less than 100 that have sold to date. It's been over a year. Less than 100. That's a really terrible track record. Now, nobody is complaining about the performance of that bike. Everybody loves that bike. It's been exceedingly well reviewed. And actually, I really want to try it. I think I'll enjoy it too. But the problem is the price is too high and the range is too low. So the equation was wrong. And the equation is wrong because they are shipping to their dealers who they have to cut into the profit margins on. So if you have a very thin profit margin, the only way to get your costs down is make the battery smaller. So they have a battery that's really under the acceptable range for what you really need in a motorcycle because of the charge time and the non-ubiquity of charging and that kind of problem. So they got the equation wrong, but I don't think they'll get it wrong again. The question is, will they try again? People buying the Harley Livewire are not Harley customers. And so it needs to be under a different brand name. Like Volvo has all their electric cars under Polestar, and that's the right thing to do. People don't want to go to GM for an electric car or to Volvo for an electric car. They want to go to a new brand that's recognized for doing new things in that way. And I think that's a real challenge. I don't know how these other manufacturers are going to solve that without spinning out a new brand. And honestly, I think that would be the right thing to do, is to spin out a new brand. Okay.
And have you followed? Have you been following Long Way Up and watching the trip?
Yeah, I'm amazed they got as far as they did. But they're followed by a Sprinter with a gigantic diesel generator on the back of it. That I think is being used far more than they thought it might have to be. I am exceptionally impressed with the Rivians and with the fact that they put charging stations all the way up the most remote places. But yeah, if that bike only had 200 miles range, I think it would be doing exceptionally well.
Yeah. I mean, it did seem, the thing that surprised me is it certainly from watching that, it does seem like the reliability of electric is really, I mean, you know, we hear that there's less moving parts, there's less things to go wrong, it's easier to kind of manage the motor than it is to manage an engine. I mean, you know, side by side, obviously, as two pieces of technology, the electric motor makes loads more sense anyway. Is reliability one of the things that kind of, that again, is gonna play in your favor?
You know, I guess if you own more modern bikes, like fuel injected bikes, kind of 1996 or later, no, we're not really too concerned about reliability on motorbikes. They're pretty bulletproof. You know, Japanese bikes, English bikes, most all of them, other than perhaps Harley Davidsons, are pretty reliable. So, you know, that said, I think we'll enjoy not having to go in for $1,000 valve jobs every 2 years and things like that. I think the freedom from the maintenance costs is a big deal.
Yeah. You're doing a straight to customer, so you're basically not going to have a dealership network. It's going to be, is it just literally going to be online sales?
Yeah, we're going to sell online, so you can order online. Then you will do a lot of demo tours, first to North America and then through Europe. London, Paris, probably be our first stops, and give people opportunities for frequent test rides as often as every month if possible. And then people can get the bike shipped directly to their front door. It will uncrate very, very easily. Download the app, pair your phone to the bike. It'll walk you through a video tutorial that'll explain to you how all the parts all the features on the bike work. You press I accept every time you've watched how that feature works, so that we know you've watched it, and then off you go. It's, you know, we've had over 100 people ride this bike already, from the Los Angeles Police Department to executives from Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, to investors, and about 50 local riders here. And we have not explained all the features or any of the features to anyone before they ride. It's that intuitive. And that's really important that it's that intuitive. But that said, we'll offer these little video tutorials to make sure you have a full understanding before you ride it, because it is a slightly different rider experience than anything else. And then if you need service, you know, if you drop the bike and break the fairing or whatever, you'll be able to bring it into any authorized service center that we set up to do service on Damon bikes.
What's the future looking like for Damon Motorcycles? What's the kind of big master plan? Is it to kind of follow a Tesla trajectory and sort of get the manufacturing ramped up so that you can, you know, play with the big boys?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We are seeing really extraordinary demand, and we haven't even thrown any fuel on the fire yet. Virtually all of our orders are coming from coordinated PR efforts, organic searches, and interest in the product. And you know, when we do throw fuel on the fire, I think we'll be seeing tens of thousands of pre-orders all over North America and Europe. So we're in discussions about setting up manufacturing in Europe. We're working on setting up manufacturing already in Canada. And I think we're going to be backfilling on order books for at least the next 5 to 7 years. And without getting into a lot of detail, exactly, we're following the Tesla playbook all the way.
Fantastic. I know that loads of people watching my channel are going to have this question. How can we get hold of one in the UK?
Yeah. Well, you can order one right now, and that's probably the most important thing you do. The more orders we get from a given geography, the sooner we prioritize that geography. That said, the UK will probably be our first, if not our close first, maybe second launch market for Europe. Okay. At the moment, I suspect that'll be late 2022. Early 2023 for shipping. The same $100 pre-order. It's fully refundable. It's refundable, no questions asked. If you really, all you're doing with the deposit is you're securing your place in line. Fine. And so that's important. And you know, we can all spare $100 on something we really care about. And if you change your mind in 3 months or whenever, by all means, you know, you just go online, you click refund, and you don't even have to interact with anybody at Damon if you want to get a refund. So it's fully transparent. It's really easy to manage. You can share a referral link with your friends if you want to get them on board too. And we'll have a whole bunch of exciting swag coming out really soon, a whole web store full of accessories. But the thing that I think is really worth mentioning is the subscription plan. So we will have a subscription plan coming with the bike. It's a bit like a finance, and what it does is it offers you the ability to get a Damon motorcycle on a monthly payment over a 2, 3, or 4 year period, just like your smartphone. We bundle in the connectivity, the data, and the payment all into a simple model where we also guarantee the residual value of the bike, so that at the end of 2 or 3 or 4 years, you can give it back to us and get a credit towards your next Damon bike. because the problem with technology is that it moves too fast.
And in terms of a UK price, if we just do a straight conversion to pounds from the dollars, is that going to be in the ballpark?
Yeah, that'll be very, very close, very accurate. In the matter of a few months here, we're going to be launching the localization on our website. So you'll be able to select Germany, UK, France, and get your conversion and everything, and ship dates in the website then.
Amazing. And then the last question, answer this one very carefully. If I fly myself out to Canada next year, will I be able to get a ride on one in one of your demo days?
Yeah, you will. Well, you're more likely to get onto a demo ride in California than you are in Canada.
Oh, okay. California. I'm happy with California. No problem.
Part of it is weather.
No problems there at all. Well, listen, it's been really amazing to talk to you. It's been really fascinating to hear the kind of story behind this. It's such an amazing, motorcycle and vehicle. And to hear the kind of the passion and all the thought that's gone behind this is really exciting. I should be looking to place an order at some point very, very soon. But listen, thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it. And good luck with everything.
Have a good one. Take care.
Cool.